We've all heard about the awakening of consciousness, and maybe some of us are going through it right now. This moment where we begin to see life through entirely new eyes. When the veil of illusion starts to drop, and the truth of how reality really works becomes clearer with every step. But not many talk about the darker side of this process. The path of self-discovery isn't a smooth walk into the light. More often than not, it's a journey straight into the shadows. When we choose to awaken, we're not simply rising into a state of bliss. Awakening means opening the door to parts of ourselves we've hidden away or ignored. Stepping into full consciousness is like walking through a portal, not only into light but into shadow as well. Every insight we gain reveals a deeper layer underneath. Every revelation is followed by something we've tried not to look at. This video is about that forgotten and uncomfortable part of awakening and why facing it matters. Understanding the dark side of this path isn't about avoiding the truth. It's about embracing the human experience in its fullness. There's this idea, almost a myth, that awakening is like waving a magic wand that solves all our problems. A promise of a life free from suffering, a constant state of peace, where everything finally feels complete. For many, awakening seems like a peaceful retreat, a place where worldly pain can no longer reach us. But that's actually the first trap of awakening. It's subtle, but powerful. It convinces us that all we need is to reach some higher frequency or enlightened state, and everything hard will melt away. It's tempting to believe. This mindset turns awakening into a kind of product, something to chase for quick relief. But in reality, awakening isn't about escaping pain. It's about learning how to see pain differently. It's not about getting rid of our problems. It's about living with them honestly and openly, without running or turning away. And this is where many people first hit disillusionment, realizing that awakening doesn't erase our humanity. It doesn't delete our doubts, our flaws, or our fears. In fact, it often brings them into sharper focus. True spirituality doesn't offer shortcuts. It demands we face ourselves. And that work can hurt, because it forces us to meet the parts of us we've tried to forget. One of the first things we face on the path is the ego. This structure we've spent our whole lives building, our identity. The ego is complex. It doesn't like being questioned, much less dismantled. When someone enters the spiritual path hoping to feel more important or special, they often crash into deep frustration, because awakening doesn't feed the ego. It exposes it completely. The ego clings to ideas like, I'm special, I'm evolving, I'm above the illusion. And spirituality becomes just another way to prop up our self-image. But real awakening doesn't lift us above others. It invites us to surrender fully. It reminds us we're not separate, not superior. We're just small waves in a boundless sea of being. The illusion that awakening makes us better than others falls apart, and in its place, we're left with humility. That's when the disillusionment hits hard. And yes, it's painful. It feels like the mind, which once clung to beliefs and certainties, starts to unravel. Disillusionment is like a purge. It strips away all the stories we've built about life and about ourselves. And for the most part, it's uncomfortable because it takes away our ground. As consciousness expands, it shines a light on everything we've tried to bury: the pain, the shame, the memories we've pushed away. Most of us keep an idealized image of who we think we are, but eventually the shadow shows up, and we can't keep going until we face it. The shadow is made up of everything we don't want to acknowledge in ourselves: traits we find ugly, emotions we're ashamed of, wounds we've buried. We hide these things because they don't match the version of ourselves we want to believe in. But pretending they're not there doesn't make them go away. They stay active in our unconscious, shaping our thoughts, our decisions, and how we connect with others. Facing the shadow isn't easy, but it's powerful, because hidden inside it is energy, vital, creative energy. We burn so much of our life force keeping these things locked away. Over time, it drains us. Shadow work isn't just some add-on to spirituality. It is the path. When we dig deep, we find traits that clash with our spiritual self-image: jealousy, resentment, envy, arrogance, insecurity. It stings to admit these things still live inside us. It's the moment we realize the version of ourselves we thought we'd outgrown is still there. And most clearly, the shadow shows up in our relationships. The people who trigger strong emotions, whether anger, anxiety, or intense attraction, are often mirroring parts of ourselves we're not ready to see. Carl Jung called this projection. When we repress something inside, we end up seeing it in someone else. But when we recognize that the issue isn't out there, that it's in us, we can begin using our relationships to heal. Integrating the shadow doesn't mean excusing bad behavior. It means acknowledging that these traits are part of our wholeness. When we fight the shadow, it grows stronger. But when we face it and accept it, it loses control. Jung believed that real transformation, what he called individuation, comes from integrating all parts of the self. What we recognize can no longer rule us. Even emotions like anger and fear, when understood, can teach us. Anger shows us our boundaries. Fear shows us our courage. And this process of meeting our own darkness makes us more compassionate. We stop judging others so harshly. We know everyone carries something they don't talk about. On this path, the ego continues to be one of our biggest hurdles. It wears a mask to protect our identity and inflate our sense of importance. But that mask also blocks transformation. The ego wants to hold on to its image of me, so it fights spiritual growth. It resists change because it fears losing control. It sees awakening as death. Losing its old labels feels like disappearing. So it pushes back with fear, with anger, with doubt. It panics, trying to keep its grip. This inner struggle has been described across traditions. When Jesus said, "You must lose your life to gain it," he was talking about letting go of the ego's illusion to find what's real. Losing the self doesn't mean being erased. It means expanding into something greater, becoming more connected to everything, not less ourselves, but more fully alive. Think of it like two waves in sync. They amplify each other into something stronger. But even on this path, the ego can sneak back in. It wears the mask of enlightenment, pretending it's already arrived. Chogyam Trungpa called this the spiritual ego. It's when the journey turns into a performance, something to show off. We convince ourselves we're ahead of others. But that's just ego again, playing a new role. Real awakening isn't about status. It's about humility. It's not about being seen. It's about service, about helping, connecting, and remembering what really matters. Because spirituality isn't about escaping life. It's about stepping into it, all of it, the joy and the grief, the beauty and the shadow, the questions and the clarity, the mess and the silence. And in that, we find something real, something honest, something whole. The spiritual path is rarely straight and serene. More often, it's a descent into the unknown, what mystics call the dark night of the soul. Saint John of the Cross described it as a deep spiritual crisis, when everything familiar dissolves and the meaning of life slips into shadow. But it's not just suffering, it's transformation. In this darkness, it feels like we've lost the ground beneath us. The path we thought we were on disappears, and we're forced to turn inward. Thomas More, in Care of the Soul, says this moment is an invitation to shed the illusions we've built about who we are and what life should be. Yes, it's painful, but it prepares us for something far more real. Like a caterpillar entering the cocoon, this is not the end. It's a pause before something new takes shape, before wings form. Paulo Coelho, in The Alchemist, said that sometimes we must walk through the dark to find the light inside. The pain, the silence, the confusion, these aren't blockages, they're catalysts. They push us to face hidden truths and to release old beliefs that keep us stuck. It's a death, but one that makes space for something new. And the key to moving through it is one of the simplest tools: acceptance. Carl Jung once said, "What you resist persists. What you accept transforms." When we fight the dark night, we suffer more. But when we allow ourselves to feel, really feel, we create space for something to shift. Acceptance loosens our grip. We stop trying to control. And slowly, new clarity begins to form. Coming out of the dark night doesn't mean the pain is gone. It means we've learned to carry our experiences more lightly, finding a new purpose and meaning. As we keep growing, another danger appears: spiritual pride. The ego sneaks in through the back door. It takes our insights and turns them into identity, into hierarchy. Osho warned that when enlightenment becomes status, we've already lost the point. Brené Brown explains that pride often masks insecurity. We use it to protect our wounds. We may judge others or act superior, but this blocks connection. It traps us in illusion. Jack Kornfield reminds us, spiritual isolation is real. When we turn too far inward, we forget others have their own sacred journeys too. We begin to label people as awake or asleep, but that's just more ego, more division. Real spirituality is about humility, not shrinking yourself, but shifting from me to we. It's not about showing off awakening, it's about living it through compassion, through service, not to prove something, but because it's true. When we serve others, we show we haven't escaped life. We've embraced it. Light and shadow, clarity and chaos. And in that full embrace, we find something that's deeply, powerfully real. Thank you for watching.